fiber is an essential ingredient for preventing heart disease. Even on the days like if you're eating fat, you should have broccoli and cauliflower and lettuce and spinach and celery and having a lot of fiber with that is an excellent way to go. Beans, peas, lentils, those are all really high in fiber. It turns out fiber improves your cholesterol ratio. Not that that's really important, but it is for inflammation purposes. So the fiber also increases the bacteria in your intestines, your large intestine, that decrease inflammation. So there's a large benefit to fiber too. So having a high fiber diet is really good for you.
And this is going to be a good webinar. I like this topic because it has to do with food. And I consider you kind of a bit of a foodie. Would you say you're a bit of a foodie?
I love food.
Yeah.
I look at food and I want to eat.
Eat it all. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to talk about what we can and cannot eat today. Today's topic is what to eat if you want to reduce your risk of heart disease. Or probably just get rid of heart disease or eat healthy. But I think we might find out what's healthy for some may not be healthy for others. Like if you have diabetes, what's different to eat than a healthy heart diet? But I'm getting ahead of myself. You and Leslie always do a disclaimer, and I was thinking I should do a disclaimer today, but I haven't prepared anything. So let me give it my first time shot. Basically, Dr. Saunders is a professional, and he's a very good professional, a medical professional, but he is not your medical professional. So this webinar is about you learning, gaining knowledge, taking what you can, and going back to your doctor and telling him or her what you've learned and how you can change your diet or your health with our help. But it is not medical advice according to the government. But we are here to help you. How's that?
Beautiful. Wow.
All right.
Very thorough.
Good. All right. Let's see. People are already starting to join. This is one of my favorite parts to hear where everybody is from. Roy from Aurora, Colorado. And we already have questions coming in, but we're going to, wow, they are flying in today. All right, today's topic is what to eat if you want to reduce your risk of heart disease. So we have this thing called the Healthy Heart Solution Kit, which is full of great recipes for reducing your risk of heart disease. But why don't you, Dr. Saunders, give us some good principles to follow before we actually get into some of the details?
Okay, so food is a big thing for heart disease. It is part of the problem of heart disease. It's definitely not the whole thing, but it's part of the problem. So if it is part of the problem, then how can you decrease your risk? How can you improve your diet to the point where you don't get heart disease? Well, there have been a lot of studies done on this. And in the originally in the 1980s, 1990s, Dr. Dean Ornish, cardiologist in Northern California, said, I wonder if we can reverse heart disease by changing diet. And so what he did is he put people on a zero fat diet, no fat at all. You could eat all the fruits and vegetables you want. You can have grains and nuts and seeds, but you have to be careful with nuts. There's certain nuts that you would have to very limited amount of, like walnuts and macadamia nuts, because they're high in oils, right? So they can't have them. And avocados, you think, wow, avocado, that's a fruit, right? No, too much oil. That's a lot of oil in an avocado. So they limited all types of oils. And what happened was the people reversed their heart disease. They actually got better. This is not just like all of the medical research was like, well, if we lower your blood pressure and we lower your cholesterol, we can slow the rate of heart disease. You're still going to get heart disease, It just will take 5 years instead of 4 years, something like that. So, the medical establishment was saying you can't reverse it, that it's going to progress no matter what you do. But he proved that you can reverse it. And then since that time, there have been a lot of studies show, as a matter of fact, you can reverse it. And in a very real way, you can. So I'll give the example. I've used this example before because because everybody knows Bill Clinton, right? President of the United States, and back in the early 2000s. And he had heart disease, and he had like 4 or 5 vessel bypass surgery, like they cracked his chest open and open heart, stopped his heart and everything, and they fixed his arteries and everything, and then he had to heal from that over time. And then like 5 years later, whatever, he goes in for a checkup, and they go, "Oh, we're gonna have to redo it and do that surgery again." He's like, "What? You didn't do it right the first time?" And they said, "No, they're just getting clogged again like they usually do. So we're going to, because heart disease progresses, and that's what always happens. And so we'll just do another surgery." He's like, "Are you crazy? I'm not doing another surgery. You are whacked if I'm doing that again." "What are my other options?" They said, "You don't have any other options. There's nothing you can do. It's already there." So then you heard about someone called Esselstyn, who's doing essentially the same as the Dean Ornish kind of program. And so he went on the Esselstyn, the zero fat diet. And he didn't do the surgery. It reversed his heart disease. And if you've seen him, in the last, I don't know, 10 years, he's pretty skinny, and he's not overweight anymore. But that kind of thing is not well known to cardiologists. And even though there's published studies, there's books written on it, there's all kinds of stuff, but your cardiologist doesn't know about it. So you ask, "What can you eat?" "Well, eat a low-fat diet." Avoid saturated fats. Guess what? Saturated fats are not the issue. They're not the issue. Avoid eating cholesterol. Well, that's not the issue either. So it turns out that if you live on fruit and vegetables, you get fats from fruits and vegetables. You do. But if you avoid things that are high in oils, things like, I don't know, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, and nuts and seeds, and olive oil. If you're not eating any concentrated oils, you still get essential fatty acids, but you get them in a very different ratio than you do if you're taking in oil. So, for example, broccoli. A cup of broccoli. Well, no, actually, it's 2 cups of broccoli. Has about a gram of omega oils in it, but the ratio is 10 times more omega-3 than omega-6. So what you're getting in your diet is, if you eat grass when the no, you don't have to eat grass.
Thank you.
But like when cows are fed grass, their omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is very different. It's like 4 to 1 instead of like 11 to 1 ratio in cows that are fed corn, for example. So if you're not eating these concentrated oils, then what you don't get is a lot of omega-6 in your diet, and you actually have a good omega-3 or omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. So that's part of why the diet is important. So if you understand the underlying what's going on, what you're trying to do is decrease inflammation. Okay, what causes inflammation? Well, guess what? Sugar, fat, and protein. Those are the only things that cause inflammation. So if you avoid those, you won't have any inflammation. Well, if you're on a very low-fat diet, guess what you're not going to eat? How many concentrated proteins are you going to get? Well, not very many, because meat has pretty high in oils, and that's off your diet. And so you do get protein. Broccoli has more protein than milk, ounce for ounce. It's quite a lot of protein, but it's a very different protein, and it's not digested in the same way. It's actually not even as easily digested. And then the carbohydrates, the sugars. If you're not eating any sugars with fats, and that's where the key is. Sugar, you can tolerate a whole lot of sugar, but if you eat it with fat, then it's going to cause problems because fat causes insulin resistance. So for all of these, understand how your diet affects your heart, and you look at insulin resistance. Okay, what causes that? Fat. So avoid fat. And then sugar, concentrated sugars like sucrose and coconut sugars and all the agave nectars and even honey. People go, oh, honey, that's natural. That's good for you. Well, I don't know about that, because as long as you have honey, occasionally, it's not going to be a big issue. But when bears go out and they eat a whole bunch of berries and they eat a whole bunch of honey, they get fatty liver, insulin resistance, and obesity, and their energy drops down, and then they go sleep for 3 months and sleep it all off, right? So if you're going to fast for 3 months, then yeah, have all the honey you want and get fat, and then fast for 3 months like a bear. That's okay. But if you're going to eat every day, then those kinds of things are not a good daily part of your daily diet. So concentrated fats, concentrated sugars, and then avoiding connecting the two. So here's one of the cool things, and as I'm doing more research on this, I'm seeing it more and more, that part of the reason those diets really work when you cut out the fats is you're not mixing fats and carbs. So in our diet, we love mixing fats and carbs in the United States, at least, and some other countries. So think about what is ice cream? Well, it's pure sugar, fat. Put them together, and that makes ice cream. Or frosting, or cake, or pastries, or fried foods. All your fried foods are what? What are they? They're a carbohydrate that's boiled in fat, right? And so you got oil and sugar, and you put them together, and that's the worst combination you could possibly have for your diet. That's what's going to clog your arteries. That's what's going to cause insulin resistance. That's what's going to do all the damage. Inflammatory damage is being done because of this fat carb combination. So those Dean Ornish diets, they worked. Why? Because you didn't have the fat carb combination. So how would you do it otherwise? And this is where the study's never been done, but I'll bet you it shows up right. So if you eat fat, you're going to be insulin resistant for about 8 hours. Wow. So if you eat something fat, then you have 0 carbs for at least 8 hours. Wow. So if you take it, like, something to consider in your diet is on some days, if you eat fat, like let's say you have some meat, like a hamburger, protein style, right? A lettuce wrap or something like that. But you have to be careful. Ketchup, high fructose corn syrup, right? And so just like being careful of like salad dressings and things that have a lot of sugar in them. So if you have salad dressing, right, it's fat and sugar, right? So you have to, I don't know, either have just the vinegar without the oil, or if you have oil, make sure there's no sugar in it, because a lot of your the dressings that you buy at the store or at restaurants, they're pretty darn high in sugar. Mm-hmm. So don't mix them. On the days that you eat fat, don't eat sugar. On the days that you eat fruit, don't eat fat. So you can have your fruits and vegetables on one day, and carbs and rice and corn and cereal on one day, but cereal no fat, right? So and then on the days that you eat fat, you have cheese and meat and eggs and like nuts, right? that you don't eat carbs on those days, no sugar on those days, zero. And then if I wonder if that would work just as well as that totally fat-free diet. I wonder. I don't know.
That is a very interesting concept.
You heard it first here.
We sure did. Everybody take note. March 14th, 2024. Now, what about so basically you're talking about a no or very low fat diet, concentrating on your omegas. What about fiber?
Okay. So fiber is an essential ingredient for preventing heart disease. Even on the days like if you're eating fat, you should have broccoli and cauliflower and lettuce and spinach and celery and having a lot of fiber with that is an excellent way to go. Beans, peas, lentils, those are all really high in fiber. It turns out fiber improves your cholesterol ratio. Not that that's really important, but it is for inflammation purposes. So the fiber also increases the bacteria in your intestines, your large intestine, that decrease inflammation. So there's a large benefit to fiber too. So having a high fiber diet is really good for you.
Now, what about beans? Because beans are high fiber, but don't they have some carbs in them?
Yeah, beans have carbs and they have fiber and they have protein, but they don't have fat. So so beans are good for your carb days.
All right.
And I wonder, gosh, if we could do studies, that'd be great. Have carb days and fat days. Because you know what? When the studies were done on the ketogenic diet, which was at the time the Atkins diet, and then the Dean Ornish diet, the no fat diet. So you have a no carb diet and a no fat diet, and they compared them head to head. And you know what? They both worked. People lost weight. They felt better. Their heart disease improved. Everything was better. But nobody would stay on those diets. They're just, especially the Atkins diet, people just like, after a while they go, okay, I'm done with this diet, and they won't stay on it. But what if you had the option of like one day having meat and fat and all that stuff, and then another day you have beans and carbs and cereal and rice and corn and breads, all that stuff? Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a cheat day, because you're not going to cheat with cake. You're not going to cheat with cookies, but you're going to cheat with healthy carbs.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'll bet that would be a reasonable, I bet you would still be able to reverse your heart disease, and be able to have both, but just not at the same time. You don't mix them.
So if you wanted to lose weight, would this be a good diet too?
Oh, well, I don't know. If you want to lose weight, eat less, have your stomach empty as much as possible, fast periodically, because it's really what you eat, when you eat, and how much you eat. But since you wouldn't get insulin resistance, I'll bet it'd be easier to lose weight on that diet.
All right, talk about calories in, calories out. Is this what we should follow?
Okay. Calories in, calories out. That means that if you're exercising and using calories, then you can eat more, right? Wrong. Okay. So here's the problem with that, is that in order to burn 1 pound of fat, 1 pound, you have to run a marathon. And so if you ran a marathon every day, then yeah, you could eat more and that would be okay. And there are people who do that. I think it was Michael Phelps, the swimmer, that he was eating a 5,000 calorie each meal.
Wow.
But what was he doing? He's like swimming laps like all day long. And so he burned it. So the idea that people have that well, I can take in more because I'm going to go on my walk today, is really not the way things work. Because and there's more to it than that, but because the amount of energy you get from one meal is incredible. It is. I was in CrossFit And my CrossFit coach said, go burn 100 calories on the rowing machine. I'm like, 100 calories, that's one apple. That's easy. So I sat down and started rowing. Okay, I'm tired. How many calories? 20 calories. Oh my gosh. It was a chore to burn 100 calories on a rowing machine. And I thought rowing machine, that's like you're doing core and legs and arms, like you're using your whole body. Dang, it takes a lot of energy to burn like 100 calories. Is a lot of energy.
Oh, wait, your phone didn't like that.
So that's why it doesn't really work to look at calories in, calories out. It's the best way to look at it is exercise every day, and also decrease the amount of calories that you eat.
Now, do you have any favorite foods you would like to share with us, or combinations of food that would help someone who's got they want to focus on their heart?
Yeah. Okay. Some of the best things that I think that I like, lentil soup. I went to France and I had lentil soup and I go, wow, this is really good. So I decided I would learn how to make lentil soup. I love lentils. It's really actually a great meal to have. It has a lot of protein, has a little bit of carbs. It's low in fat, and I like that stuff. So I do better on carbs, and so I tend towards the low fat diet. So I do have cheat days, but I tend towards a vegetarian diet anyway. That's I'm type A. I don't know, people with the blood type thing, right? I read the book, and it's like, oh, I don't know if that's a thing, but you know what? I really do better on a vegetarian. So other people, I had somebody today who's doing really well. He's lost 14 pounds in 2 months on a carnivore diet. He's just like, he has a steak. One meal a day in the morning, he eats a steak. He's done. A breakfast steak. And that's it. And it says it keeps him going all day long, and he feels good, and it works.
Wait, one steak a day, and that's all he eats?
Well, that's what he's been doing. Yeah, but not every day. He's had other things. He has fish. He says he's doing more and having fish and other stuff now. But but it's essentially a carnivore diet, is just eating meat and nothing else.
That's a wonderful topic we should talk about, is blood types and heart health, whether or not that should be something we should consider. So it's interesting. On page 93 of the Healthy Heart Solution Kit, we actually have a lentil soup recipe. Now, people from the Barton team contributed recipes to this cookbook, and this recipe was actually contributed by Joe Barton himself, this particular lentil soup recipe. There are other recipes in here. I think I have to look, but you have a really good ceviche recipe. I don't know if to make it in here.
I hardly ever make it though, but it's great.
Yeah. So we have some butternut squash. Oops. We have some butternut squash recipe. We have lentil salmon, a homemade hummus, Italian chopped salad, shredded Brussels sprouts. So these are just a few of the recipes that you can get in the Healthy Heart Solution Kit. And I haven't mentioned this yet. If you're new here, go to bartonwebinar.com and you'll find all of our solution kits, our digital and physical products in written form that'll help you, and access to our supplements. Use webinar 25 for 25% off your order. Now, I suspect many of you here have already heard about us, so you're already putting in your questions. So if you have a good recipe you would share, or like to share that you think is heart healthy, let's put it in. We'll either talk about it, approve it, or just love it. So I'd love to know what recipes you like. I think, did I mention there's an Italian chopped salad? There's a restaurant called Portillo's, has the best chopped salad. And that was one of my recipe contributions to the cookbook. All right. So Alan Stamper says, question about fasting. I did a 3-day fast and it did help my blood sugar, but now I have a stomach issue going on. Or I'm sorry, probably blood. It says help my BS, blood sugar or
blood sugar.
Yeah, not blood pressure. Yeah.
Blood glucose. Okay, so what's the stomach issue? Okay, because sometimes fasting, can affect the bacteria in your intestines, in your large intestine. So that could be an issue. And very often when people break the fast after they've been fasting for a little while, if they don't get a lot of fiber when they break the fast, then they can have issues. I remember there was a book written 100 years ago by Upton Sinclair called The Fasting Cure. And that was before antibiotics, and they were curing all kinds of things with just fasting. And one of the topics that he brought up was, how do you break the fast? What do you eat? And so they tried eating meat. They tried milk because they thought, oh, milk is kind of like, a baby starting off with milk. And the things that worked the best, though, were the high fiber things. So things like beans, peas, lentils would be good, and salads, fruit, vegetables. Things that are high in fiber that are going to grow the good bacteria in your intestines. So start off with the good bacteria to lower inflammation, and then add in whatever other stuff later.
Yeah, she says that stomach issues included discomfort several times a day, not a harsh pain, just uncomfortable. So,
yeah,
any
I
more
don't know what
details,
that
Allison? Yeah. All right. David Brown says, my sister had a swollen aorta that showed up on an x-ray for a shoulder she broke. She has also had a lot of stress lately. I'm not sure how rare maybe the aorta is. Do you have any recommendations?
Okay, so if it's an aortic aneurysm means the aorta is normally about 3 to 4 centimeters. If it gets to be 5 to 6 centimeters, then that's a ballooning out, and as it gets bigger, it gets total amount of pressure gets more, right? So because there's more per square centimeter, right? There's more square centimeters, therefore you're getting more pressure. And so as it gets bigger, then there's more pressure in it, it tends to balloon out more. So if it's an aneurysm, then that needs to be dealt with and prevented. And so the standard way of dealing with that is to lower blood pressure so that there's not so much pressure on it. But that doesn't deal with the cause of why that's ballooning out in the first place. And so it's better to deal with why. So some people have what's called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a collagen abnormality. The collagen fibers are not really strong. And so there's elastin fibers, so things can expand. They're a little more elastic than usual. And that's the people that have like double jointed, like they can bend their thumb all the way back or their fingers. And they can put their elbows backwards and everybody goes, ew, that's weird.
Yeah.
But some people have mild cases of that where their connective tissue is not firm and solid, so it allows like the aorta to balloon out. So dealing with that would be a better option. And in that case, the first thing that I do is add sulfur. A sulfur supplement like MSM, methyl sulfonyl methane, just 500 milligrams a day can make the difference to allow it to be solid. So if you ever heard of like rubber, like a rubber eraser is really soft and you can rub it off really easily. But if you have like the rubber on a tire of a car is really hard rubber. Well, what's the difference between the soft rubber and the hard rubber? Well, in the hard rubber, they just add sulfur. And the sulfur is called vulcanization, makes the rubber really hard so that you can run 50,000 miles in your car and it doesn't wear out on the street. Running bare feet 50,000 miles, that would wear out your feet pretty easily. But the rubber is kind of similar to it's a good analogy of what the collagen fibers do. In order to make them solid, they have to have what's called disulfide bonds that hold them together. And if you have a limitation in sulfur, then you don't make those disulfide bonds very well, and then your like your aorta or other connective tissue is not going to be firm and solid. It's going to be pliable and
Yeah, and you can find MSM in most health stores, natural health food stores, if you want to take that. Now, Allison did say she's the one with the stomach issues. She had COVID in 2021 and ended up with, she didn't eat for 10 days and ended up with stomach issues. Could have that been could having COVID and not fasting for 10 and fasting for 10 days, not eating, could have that made a difference?
Well, yeah, but not eating or just having had an infection. There's something called long COVID, which is chronic inflammation that's set up by the spike protein that's made by the virus. And some people have persistent spike protein where they don't clear that out of their arteries very well, and it can cause inflammation in any part of the body. We've in Harvard, they did studies on the heart. It can cause damage to the heart. Persistent spike protein causes cardiac or brain damage or blood vessels and stomach problems. So that's a possibility. That's not out of the question.
And then what does she do for that?
We're going to get censored, from this, from talking about it.
Okay, but what do you do for stomach problems after having being sick?
What do you do for? Okay, so go to FLCCC. That's the frontline doctors, and they have what's called a long protocol, and then go through that protocol. I think that would be that's what I use, and I've seen it work.
All right. Well, actually, we have another interesting question. Speaking of being sick, Roy just finished 2 courses of antibiotics to get over a bad sinus infection. Now, should he start taking a probiotic to restore his gut, or will it come back on his own?
Yes and yes. You could start a probiotic. It's often very useful, and it will come back on its own. What's really interesting is the way human beings have lived for whatever thousands of years. There's always been a lot of probiotics in the food. I always say peas porridge in the pot 9 days old has a whole bunch of probiotics in it, right? And generally it's whatever's falling out of the air, and what's falling out of the air is like what yogurt and kimchi and sauerkraut and cheeses and all that stuff comes from the air, what's falling out of there. And well, there's a lot of lactobacillus. That's a big part of it. And so we don't generally keep lactobacillus in our intestines very well, especially if you've been on antibiotics or something. And so we replace them all the time with all these fermented foods, except one problem, that if all those fermented foods are canned or bottled or pasteurized or heated or irradiated or whatever they do, guess what they kill? Well, they kill all those bacteria that you would have normally gotten, or that human beings always got in their diet. And now we kind of limit that. So popping a probiotic pill is not a bad idea. And eating the prebiotics or the fiber in your diet is a good way to start growing them again. And they could grow back by themselves, and they often do.
So you're saying the processed kimchi and maybe kombucha and other things that we might buy aren't as good natural fermented products. So what do you recommend? Making our own kimchi? I'm not a fan of kimchi, but what other things can you do if you want to have an increase in probiotics without buying those processed fermented foods? Any idea?
Yeah, you can go to like specialty stores now, health food stores especially, and you can get things that are not pasteurized, heated, bottled, and that still have the probiotics in them. They're more expensive because they have a shorter shelf life. They're limited as far as how long they can stay on the shelf, because they still have bacteria in them that are still producing whatever lactic acid and all that stuff. So yeah, that's one way of doing it. Making your own, yeah. I lived in Venezuela. We made our own yogurt. We would just put a little bit of yogurt in milk, and we'd set it on the pilot light, set the the pan of milk on the pilot light. In the morning, we had yogurt, and we'd be able to eat yogurt that day. And you can't let it sit for a long time, over days. When you buy it in the store, even when it says active cultures, that they pasteurize the yogurt and then they add a drop of active cultures in it. So not all of them are really active cultures, but I don't know. So
I actually was reading and thinking about making my own yogurt recently. Instant Pot has a setting that you can just set to put in milk and some existing yogurt, put it on the yogurt setting and leave it overnight. And again, 12 hours later, you have yogurt. Not that hard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Don asks or tells us he's a 75-year-old male. Omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is 13:1. How do I get it under control? Fish oil, krill oil?
Fish oil, krill oil, great. Eating flax seeds, chia seeds, eating fish. And then at the same time, avoiding the things that have omega-6. So all the cottonseed oil and sesame oil and
Canola.
Canola oil, vegetable oils that are really high in omega-6. Avoid those, and so don't have oil on your salad, for example. Have a dressing that doesn't have any oil. Just, I don't know. I use balsamic vinegar. I go to Costco. I get balsamic vinegar, sprinkle that on, and then I just have spices. And I think that salad tastes great. I like salad anyway, but I don't need to put oil on it. Anyway, so getting the two issues when you have that high is, number one, getting more omega-3, and then the other half of that is getting less omega-6, so that you bring that down to a reasonable ratio.
Yes, that's right. All right. David Brown asks a very good question. He says, I'm confused. If fat causes insulin resistance, why do you allow fats on a diabetic diet?
Okay. So to make it simple, the diet that we've the diabetes solution kit. So if you listen on Wednesdays, we have the diabetes reversal seminar. We talk about how to reverse diabetes, and we don't talk a lot about fat. Occasionally it comes up. People say, how come this is not working for me? And I say, I'll tell them, well, try cutting out fat, because that makes you insulin resistant. So it's just not a simple thing to do. So in order to make it easy, what we did is just say, cut out the carbs, just detox from carbs. And then we're not going to talk about the fat. Well, if you're not eating carbohydrates, then the fat, it makes you insulin resistant. But since you're not eating carbohydrates, then you're going to start burning fat for energy. Your insulin's going to go down, and you'll become more insulin sensitive anyway. So because the insulin resistance from fat is a direct effect of the fat, it doesn't cause you to make more insulin. That's the point of that.
And let's take a moment to talk about the food pyramid. I think the government might have changed it, but for a long time it was carbs at the bottom, a large amount of carbs, then protein, then fat. But nowadays they say, hey, measure your protein and your fats by the palm of your hand, whereas sometimes you just may need to eliminate them altogether. But all right, Christine Tabor, I got a bunch of tests done and no one seems to know how to interpret. I also supposedly got oils test done, but Quest didn't seem to have any ideas what it was. Can I send in an email with a few questions about the numbers? My particle sizes, small, medium, large, were all in red. Sad face. Good news is some of my numbers did improve, but still not where they should be yet. So will you look at her numbers, as she's asking?
Yeah. Send them. Cheryl, do you pick them up, or does Leslie pick them up?
So it depends. If you send them to support@bartonpublishing.com, do attention Cheryl, I'll get that and I can look at them and then pass them on to Dr. Saunders.
Right.
Yeah. and then just make sure you're on the next webinar.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have you go live. Be prepared. So you never know. Or come back with your numbers, specific numbers. Dr. Saunders can look at them online while
Yeah.
we're on the webinar and can give
Yeah.
you some good insights as well. We love doing this. I think specific is better. So I love hearing specific examples. All right. Sally says, is heart disease really genetic, or is it more what your diet is like?
Okay. There are genetic factors that are involved. But think of genetics as the possibility, and then it's not a guarantee that that's going to happen. So, for example, people that have lipoprotein A is really high. Well, they're at higher risk for heart disease because they don't break down clots as easily, and it's all about clotting, right? Well, if you have high lipoprotein A and then you have a really good omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, like you're pretty close to 1-to-1, and you're not making any clots and you're not doing any damage to your arteries, and you have a lot of fiber in your diet so that you make the glycocalyx, and your arteries are clean, and you don't make clots in your arteries, then your lipoprotein A is irrelevant. So yeah, you have a genetic predisposition, but it's not going to do anything. It's not going to become a problem because of your lifestyle. So it's not an either or situation. It's a, how am I going to ameliorate this problem? So if you know you have a genetic predisposition, gosh, everyone in my family dies at age 50 of heart disease, has a heart attack at age 50. Well, you know what? You should look into why that is. And because then you can do something about it if you know why. If you don't know why, if somebody tells you it's cholesterol and it's not cholesterol, and you're working really hard on your cholesterol, and your problem is lipoprotein A, and you're making clots, and you're working really hard on your cholesterol, and you die at age 50, and you're going to be going like, well, so you're not going to be going, what the heck?
Your family will be going,
Your
well.
family's going to be going, he was working so hard on his cholesterol, but that wasn't the problem. So knowing the problem it can tell you what to do about it. So that's where the genetics comes in, the usefulness of the genetics. And then you can change your lifestyle, and that's called epigenetics. Epi means on top of genes. So more important than your genetics is your epigenetics. And that's how you deal with the genes and whether you express them or not.
So good. All right, James put in the chat, I have sprouted grain avocado toast with kimchi for breakfast. Is that too much fat?
Avocado to kimchi. Wow, that sounds great. I don't think that's too much fat. I don't know. And then is it too much of a mixture of carbs and fats? I don't know. I'm struggling with just toast at this point. Do I put butter on my toast? You know, I really like buttered toast, but I guess I don't think that's too much fat. There's a lot of fiber in that. The sprouted grain and the kimchi and the avocado all are really high in fiber. And so I don't have a problem with that at all.
What if he did eggs with avocado and kimchi?
Oh, that sounds even better. I want to make one of those.
There you go, James. That might be the answer. And then on your off days, do it with the toast. But sprouted toast is definitely the way to go rather than processed if you can. All right. Good questions coming in. Whitney asks, what about prebiotics? How important are prebiotics?
Prebiotics are really important. That's what grows your good bacteria. That's what grows the probiotics. That's the fiber. It's fructooligosaccharides and inulins, all those fiber things that you don't digest, but those bacteria in your intestines can digest, and that's what keeps them growing. And what's really interesting, if you look at the research on the bacteria in the intestines, when they study the amount of bacteria that's in there, the prebiotics produce the really good bacteria that lower inflammation, that produce the short chain fatty acids that improve your brain and make you feel better and all that stuff. They're actually really important. And so look at processed food. When we process food, what do we take out? Well, fiber. If you have a whole grain bread versus a processed or a white bread, what's the difference? Well, the fiber is the big difference. That's the prebiotics. They're taking out the prebiotics and giving you the starchy part, which is just the sugar part. But you're not, so you're feeding yourself the starch, but your bacteria in your colon aren't getting anything from that. So the processed things are generally the fiber is removed from them, and that's the good stuff.
All right. All right. Jill has two questions. Do you have a recommendation for a sugar substitute? And the second is, do you have a recommendation for a collagen supplement?
Okay, let's do the second one first. Collagen supplement. Okay, so for people who have EDS, I do recommend a collagen supplement, and it's not because it's gonna fix everything. It's just you don't want this to be the limiting factor. If you already have a genetic predisposition to a problem with collagen, you don't want to be missing proline so that you can't make your collagen normally. If other people are missing proline, no big deal. They'll just move on and put something else in there. But if you put something else in there, you already have an irregular collagen, so it's not gonna fit together as well. It's gonna be worse. So in that case, yes, I do recommend, and it doesn't have to be every day, at least a few times a week, take a collagen supplement. And it's collagen by itself is not really very digestible. It's hard to digest. So collagen peptides. So just look for collagen peptides. That would be the one. And then what was the first one? The sugar substitute. The problem with sweet is that every time you taste sweet, you release insulin. Insulin prepares your body for the sugar that's coming down the pike, that's going to be brought into your body, brought into your cells. And so insulin is already being produced. Your pancreas is already getting ready for sugar. And then if you eat a sugar substitute, a sweet artificial sweetener, then that happens, but there's no sugar there. So you end up getting more insulin resistant. So research has shown, multiple studies have shown that eating sugar substitute causes more obesity than eating sugar. And part of that is because the sugar substitutes are like 300 times sweeter than sugar. So they stimulate those sweet receptors more and cause more release of insulin. So insulin is what tells your body to hold on to fat. The only way you can get fat is to have insulin. If you don't have insulin, you can't get fat. Someone with type 1 diabetes that doesn't make insulin can eat as much as they want and they will never gain weight. Nothing. They will, in fact, lose weight on a 10,000 calorie a day diet. How does that happen? Because they don't have insulin. They can't put on any fat because they just don't have insulin. And they end up starving to death no matter what they eat. So the sugar substitutes that make insulin, they just tell the body, make more fat, make more fat, make more fat. So I don't recommend them at all.
Jill, how do you like them apples? Not exactly what you were wanting to hear, I bet. But he also talks about this in the high blood sugar webinar as well, just to completely avoid the taste of sugar if possible. Now, Elsa just put in the chat, I can see someone, oh, what about the sugar and fruit?
It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
You can get just as much fat on fruit as you can on sugar substitutes or sodas or whatever. Just because it's natural doesn't mean that it's less effective at raising your insulin levels.
And let's say that's particularly that would be sensitive for someone who has insulin problems. More so, wouldn't you say? It's not a danger for anyone on the street and everyone to eat sugar and fruit, but it's it could cause weight gain, but particularly those who have blood sugar issues to avoid it, right?
Exactly,
Because
especially.
with the heart healthy diet, we're wanting to eat fruit and vegetables, like,
Right. Yeah, to
right.
increase the probiotics, the
Yes.
prebiotics. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you really have to be conscious of what you're eating for. Now, Whitney throws another great question. Don't you need fats for brain health?
Ah, good question. Yes,
Yeah.
that's why we talk about that omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. Yes, and in fact, the DHA is an omega-3 oil, and that's really good. So, avoiding fats is okay. But the point is, like with the fat-free diets from the Dean Ornish diet or the McDougall diet, or the Esselstyn diet, you do get fats. Like I said, broccoli has a gram of omega-3 oils in 2 cups of broccoli. So you do get fats in fruits and vegetables. Well, not very much in fruit. Well, except avocado. Yeah. So you can't avoid getting fats. The point is to have the good kind of fats and avoid the bad kind of fats.
Okay, quick question about like how much fiber you should be getting. Do you recommend on this for heart health getting a certain amount of grams of fiber a day?
Yeah, if you could count to 40 grams of fiber a day, that seems to be an optimum level. And if you want to read a book on it, there's a book called Fiber Fueled by Dr. Will Bolsheviks. And he is a gastroenterologist. And so he's talking about um, uh, fixing or reversing intestinal problems by getting a high fiber diet. But at the same time, he talks about the probiotics and the prebiotics and all of that stuff. And it's actually really good for the heart too. And he explains why getting 40 grams of fiber a day is a really good idea.
All right, so here's a follow-up question about fruit. Should you not eat fruit on meat days? Will that be bad for heart health? Elsa, did you catch that?
Exactly.
Yes.
That was my point, is that
Mhm.
you could have a day of fruits and vegetables and grains and breads, and then you could have another day of meat and fish and eggs and cheese and all that stuff.
There you go. All right. Here's an interesting question. Anthony says, I recently purchased the Healthy Heart Support, and I noticed that there's a big difference in the milligrams of the ingredients compared to the suggested amounts in the book. For example, the book said 500 milligrams of magnesium, and the bottle is 125. How would you suggest I proceed to get the best results?
Um, okay, so um, remember their guidelines, and 125 is kind of a minimum. 500 is generally what the pills come in, so it's easy to get 500 if you're taking a supplement, and that's fine. But some of them come in like 125, and that's okay. I've had people take 500 milligrams and it gives them diarrhea, and so they don't want to take that much. So uh, um, keep in mind that numbers are not exact.
Mhm.
That numbers don't apply to everyone equally. That applying it to you would be working it out in terms of how that works for you. I have other people that say they have to get about 400 milligrams of magnesium at night before they go to bed, or they don't sleep.
Mhm.
Because the magnesium has a relaxing effect on muscles and it calms, and so it allows them to sleep. So, like for different reasons, you might have different amounts of magnesium, but at least getting some amount of magnesium every day is really important because it's a common deficiency. And so that's why we put it in there, is because it's a common deficiency. And if you don't have enough, then you're not going to make energy in your heart. Well, people end up with congestive heart failure just from not having enough magnesium.
And I would suggest, if I may, start with 125. See if your bowels can handle that, and then try doubling it. If some people have problem taking 500 and they have diarrhea, well, don't get to that point, but start small and increase to see what your body can take and how you sleep. And that's basically start small and build upward. All right. Don says, I am told I have kidney issues. My GFR is 49 and BUN is 35. Should I cut down on protein? Will baking soda and water help?
Okay, so the idea of a protein causing kidney disease is really not a real thing. The problem with protein is you have to process all that protein, and it leaves you a bunch of waste nitrogen like BUN and urea. And so you have to get that out of your kidneys. So they say, well, you don't want to have too much protein because then your kidneys have to get rid of that. Your kidneys aren't filtering very well, so don't eat too much protein. So it's not the protein that's going to damage your kidneys. What damages the kidneys is fructose and insulin resistance. And so what you want to have is get rid of all fructose out of your diet. And that means like fruit sugar, sucrose. The only sugars that don't have fructose are glucose, which you find in starches, most starch, and then lactose, which is milk sugar. And it turns out that those are the ones that don't damage the kidneys, and all the other ones, sucrose and fructose and agave nectar and honey and all of those, they're the ones that do damage to the kidneys. And so a low protein diet is fine. It's not going to hurt you at all, but it's not going to save your kidneys is the point. And then adding just a half a teaspoon of baking soda a day to water and drinking that like a half a cup of water, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, can alkalinize the urine a little, and that alkalinization of the urine does seem to prevent progression to renal failure or slow progression to renal failure. So adding that in, making your urine more alkaline. So those are the two things that I'd recommend. Get rid of fructose and make your urine more alkaline.
Good question, Don. We certainly hope that helps you and you get good results. Lily asks, is dilated aorta also a result of inflammation? In addition to MSM, can anti-inflammatories help? Can aorta diameter actually reduce?
It's unlikely that the aortic diameter is going to reduce because the pressure is always going to be there. You know, your heart is going to continuously beat. If you could stop your heart for a couple of months and let everything come back to normal, then that would be okay. But that's not going to happen. So don't expect it to reduce. That's not what it's going to do. And the other part of that question is no, it's not inflammation. It's the ballooning of the artery because of weakness of the connective tissue. So then the question, how do you make the connective tissue stronger so that it doesn't balloon out and get bigger? And that's where I added the sulfur and the collagen peptides. So collagen peptides and MSM are two good ways of helping, and that's kind of shooting in the dark in some ways too, because there are literally hundreds of different problems that can happen with the collagen fibers, and it's not easy to find the one or address all of them. And so just providing what collagen needs generally to be strong is a good start.
Okay, so maybe one last question, which I'm going to combine to two. Someone says they have clogged arteries. Will a diet of alternating fats and carbs help speed up unclogging the arteries? And the other question is this alternating days going to help someone with arterial stenosis?
Okay, so those are actually the same question, because the arterial stenosis means it's narrowed, and then there's clogging of the arteries. And so is it going to reverse that clogging of the arteries? Well, that's what I was saying. The study hasn't been done, but I suspect it would work. because the studies on either this or that have worked. And so I wonder if you could just do like one day with one and one day with another, and if that would still work, because you wouldn't get the insulin resistance because you're not eating fats with carbs. So that's a theory, right? So I don't know about that. So if you want to know about research, the research shows that if you do a very low fat diet, meaning you don't have any concentrated oils in anything, there is pretty good evidence that you can reverse that stenosis or that atherosclerosis of your arteries.
That is good news. Let's end on good news. So our time is up today. Thank you, Dr. Saunders. I look forward to
You're
seeing
welcome.
you and everybody else back here next week. Have a good week.
Next week.
Bye.
Okay, bye.